Hey, we are about to get started here with another media partner sponsor spotlight. But first, we're going to take just a moment here before we get started. Hey, what is going on? This is Ricardo with Within the Trenches Media, and this is going to be the September Media Partner Spotlight, and this is sponsored by RQI LLC Partners, and I'm excited. It's been a couple months, and there's always a lot of stuff going on, right? And I'm currently in Kentucky. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm here for the Kentucky Emergency Services Conference. I was walking around earlier with my good friend Leah in the Industry Partner Hall and visiting a bunch of different folks that we know. And then there was a call that was coming up, and I had to run back to my room. It wasn't for this session; it was for a different call. But I had to haul butt back to my room to get on that call that turned into an impromptu episode as me as a guest on someone else's podcast. So that was a lot of fun. And then I just stayed in here and started getting prepared for this episode, this broadcast that we're doing here right now. And again, I'm excited to have my guest on. We're going to be sharing her story, but also another story that has to do with TCPR and the program brought to you by RQI. So my guest today is Dina, and she is a police dispatcher with WCCCA. No, that is not a wrestling organization. That is a dispatch center. Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
So, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have you on and talk to you. But this the center that you work for, what exactly does that stand for?
It's Washington County Consolidated Communications Agency.
Oh man,
We're
that
the
is
second largest PSAP in Oregon.
that is a mouthful.
Well, we're the first. We're the first for the longest name.
There you go. Okay. All right. Awesome. You get to hold that title then.
Yeah.
As I was telling you, there's a lot of times where I'll have people come on and I'm interviewing them and such, and I know I'm going to butcher the name. So I usually have them say it, and I'm glad you did. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. I'm excited to hear more about you and also to share your story. So just right off the bat, how did you get involved in public safety?
This is my second career. I started this at 47. I wanted to start it when I was younger, but I just didn't have the confidence to do it. So I was self-employed for 27 years, and my husband was getting ready to retire. And I said, well, let me go find something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And now I have the confidence to do it. And I applied in October of 2017 and got hired and started in November of 2018.
Wow. So what was it in the beginning that you mentioned how you didn't have a lot of that confidence to go ahead and do it, but what was it that really drew you to the profession to begin with? Do you come from a family of public safety, or was it just something that you kind of heard about and you thought, I think that's something that I would like to do?
I come from a family with a lot of military service and a family that believes in service and giving back, and I've always wanted to. I don't technically qualify for fit enough. So I found something that I was able to do and that lied within most of my strengths. So
Awesome. So
911
then,
it was.
so what was it like for you then in the beginning? Like you get in there, did you get a chance to do any type of sit along or anything like that to really get a feel for it?
Yeah, I got to do a sit along. They have a really comprehensive program. We start with several tests: the typing test, test to see how you would react in certain situations, your background test, many, many tests. I think there was about 7 of them altogether. And one of the processes was the sit along, and I got to sit along with a couple different ladies, and one of the ladies is now one of my work best friends. And we joke around that I thought that because I had the sit along, I had the job pretty much. I had one more interview and I was done. And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, girl, you have a long way to go. I doubt you'll even make it." So
Oh man.
yeah, she was brutal. And I was like, "What do you mean? I thought I was getting hired tomorrow." She goes, "No, no, no." She goes, "You have 3 more interviews after that, and you have this and this." She goes, "We'll see if I even see you." So she doesn't remember that, but I do, and I give her
Oh
a bad time
geez.
about it.
It's okay. That is always fun to be able to, yeah, to bring that up and the person be like, ah, that didn't happen. Like, no, I do. I remember that
Yeah.
definitely happened there. And so that's awesome. You end up going through that, and now you've got a work best friend that came out of it as well. But I want to go to the typing test really quick. So how many words did you need? And the reason I ask is because one of the dispatch centers that I was trying to get into, at the same time, I ended up being at the center that I was at, the last one that I was at. Theirs was, it was only 25 words per minute that you needed to be able to type, but you could only get 3 like mess ups. That's all you could get wrong, and after that, it was done. What was it like for you?
I went to an employment agency,
Hmm.
and I had to do 45 words per minute, but they took so much time off for every mistake. So you could make a mistake, but they deducted time for it.
Oh,
So you had to be, and I think I was coming in at 65 to 70, but with my mistakes, I hit 45 on the nose.
oh man. Yeah. And so for me, when I went and took that test, I thought, man, 25 words per minute, that's nothing. I'll just go ahead and breeze through it. And you had to get through like 3 or 4 different paragraphs, I think it was. You had to go through the whole thing. And I had made a mistake like almost right off the bat, and I thought, oh, okay, that's not what I was expecting. And so I keep going, and then I have 2 mistakes. So I thought, I think what I need to do is hunt and peck and just
Oh,
keep the same pace. And I was, I had like 30 or 35 words per minute just in the hunt and peck, and I made it through. I thought, wow, I almost got taken out by typing because I got overconfident. So
I understand.
I, yeah. So with the with the sit along that you ended up doing, I have to ask, did anything happen? And the reason I ask is because I remember being in dispatch and having other people come in who wanted to work in dispatch as well. And they would sit along for a few hours, whether it be 2 or 4 or whichever, and nothing would happen. And they would say, oh, this is pretty easy. You guys are just kind of chilling here, waiting for a phone call to come in. And all of us would be sitting there going, no, this is not a true depiction of what dispatch is. So, did anything happen during your sit along?
No,
No.
it didn't. Uh, somebody spilled French fries, I think, eating dinner, and then one one of the girls got a phone call from the road thanking her for her service and telling her what a
Mhm.
great dispatcher she was, and I'm like, "Oh, that's so sweet that they do that." She's like, "This is the first time in 10 years that I've worked here that this has ever happened. Don't ever expect to see it again." But
Oh man.
yeah. But other than that, no, it was pretty basic. I missed a lot when I sat with the police dispatchers because I
Mhm.
just couldn't keep up with the screens and the radios and everything that way.
So then how many years have you been doing this now?
Going on 4.
Nice. Excellent. And was there a moment in the beginning where you felt, this is where I'm supposed to be? You had that feeling in the beginning that it was something that you want to pursue, but you didn't have the confidence for it. But then you get into it, right? And was there was that moment, whether it be a phone call or something that happened in training or whichever, that you thought, you know what, I'm in the right place?
I had a great training. I got to deliver a baby in training. I got my pink stork when I was in training, so that was really exciting.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I'll ever get another one. I came close one time, but the fire department swooped in and stole it from me.
Oh, how dare they?
I know. That's what I said too. They built a new fire station and it was 10 minutes closer. I'd have had one. But
Oh man. Yeah,
uh
that.
yeah, it just there's so many calls where you could just connect with the people and know that you were able to help them and get through that with them.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, this I can get through this and I can help them and stay calm for them. And that made a huge difference in giving me some confidence to be able to get through the training.
Do you feel that the job that you were doing before, for it was 24 years, right? You had been doing that with the tow truck company and everything. Do you feel that there was anything that you did there in those 24 years that kind of prepared you for the job that you're doing now?
When I'm a night shifter,
Mhm.
so I work from 10 p.m. till 10 a.m. usually, and dealing with the drunks, yes, dealing with some of the belligerent people,
Yeah.
that really helped. Being able to understand what they were saying when they weren't at their best, and still be able to get through and figure out what they were saying and be able to assist them. That's not much different than what I do here, except that they're usually a little bit ruder when it's not a recorded line. Not always, but sometimes.
Right, very true. And kind of going back to your to the birth, call that you did and everything on there. Um, what was that like? Because a lot of us have taken calls and have gotten close, and have not been able to go through the whole thing. I myself, the reason I bring it up too is because I myself, um, I had a chance, and I'm taking this call, right, and um he's saying all this stuff. It's like, the baby is coming, the baby is coming, and I'm thinking, this is an amazing moment, and I'm able to be part of this, and to help this family. But I'm also in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to get this Stark pin, I'm going to end up with my name on that plaque, this is going to be awesome. But then I hear and I said, sir, are you running? And he goes, yeah. And I said, you left your wife? Like, where are you going? And he goes, I'm dropping off our other kid to the neighbors. And because we're going to go to the hospital and stuff, and they already had it planned that their kid was going to go to the neighbor's house and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, get back to your wife as fast as you can. So again, he's running, I hear him, and he gets there and the baby's born, and I thought, no. I was like, I missed it. And the EMS had gotten there, and it all just happened all together. I'm like, okay, have a good one and stuff. And I thought, because I was that close, I was going to get that pin, but I got robbed. But what was that like for you? That experience, and hearing it, and just everything that comes with a call like that.
It was exciting, but I had never thought that I'd have to be that up on those cards. And I was a month and a half in,
Mhm.
and when I got it, and they were a mile from the hospital. And she says, you need to pull over. And this voice came out of her, and he's like, oh, I'm pulling over. And so he pulled over a mile from the hospital at our local transit center. And she delivered the baby at the transit center. I mean, he literally was able to get her pants off, and the baby was coming out. It was that fast. It was over in 4 minutes.
What?
And I'm sitting there and going, congratulations, Dad. And nobody's saying anything. And I was like, oh, this is awkward. And found out later that they were surrogates. And
Oh,
they were driving into Oregon to try to deliver the baby with with the parents, and they didn't make it to the hospital.
oh, geez. So yeah, a crazy experience for everyone involved, and you said a month and a half in,
Yeah.
and that, no, not a lot of people, that doesn't happen with a lot of people, but you got to experience that, and that is awesome. That just adding to everything else that you do. Would you say that kind of also added to that feeling of, you know this is where I'm supposed to be?
Yes. Yeah. There's key moments, and that was definitely one of them.
Oh, that is amazing, because this job, there's a lot that goes into it, right? And not a lot of people understand. And sometimes people think that you're just there answering the phone and going to the next one and going to the next one, and that there's not a lot of impact. But there is a lot of impact that comes from it, whether it be the calls that you take, or also the calls that those people that you help when they call in. We don't always know the impact, but that impact is there, and the job that you do matters.
Hmm.
So you end up going through all of the training and everything. How many people work on the floor at a time, and how big of an area do you cover?
We have, in Washington County, we have about 600,000 people.
Mhm.
We have anywhere between 8 and 14 people on the floor at any time, usually 8 at night when it's a little bit slower, and 14 in the day at the peak call times. We don't have any call taker positions only. We
Mm.
do sometimes have people staffed as a call taker, but we don't have any just call taker positions at this time. You need to get signed off of a radio and at least be a police dispatcher or become a multidiscipline dispatcher. And so we average about 1,000 calls a day. And yeah, I should know this off the top of my head. I work all the radios, but I still have to count all my officers up. But we have 9 police agencies
Mhm.
here. So
And it's interesting as well because you're doing all disciplines, right? So there's so much going on that people don't understand, where you're at your console, you're taking phone calls, and you're also on radios, whether it be fire, EMS, or in this case also police, right? And you're listening not only to all of that, but you're also on the phone with someone taking a call, and you're also listening to them, but also listening beyond them to the environment that they're in. Because depending on the call, let's say it's an open line or even a domestic or something, you're listening to what's going on, but you're listening to what's going on in the background as well, because that also helps in figuring out what it is that's going on. um, Especially with an open line, like that's all you have to listen to is whatever voices, whatever sounds. There is so much that goes into it, where you're piecing together this puzzle to type and say what it is that you think is going on. And sometimes it's worse, or not as bad as what it is that you're hearing and piecing together, right? it, it,
yeah.
it goes both ways, but there's so much that goes into it, right?
hmm Exactly. There was one day that I was working our primary sheriff's office radio, and that radio has 2 radios. We have a partner that assists. They run the people and we dispatch the calls on the for primary radio. And I picked up a phone and he picked up a phone, and I had a guy that says I've just been shot and it's in my district, and he has the guy that's trying to do the medical it's the guy's roommate. So
Mhm.
he's giving all the medical instructions and I'm getting all the description, and I'm toning out the call and I said, "Hey guys, I'm the call taker. I'll get you the information as soon as possible, but just bear with me." And the guys were great. They did. They wait. I said, and don't go to SO2 because he's giving the medical instructions for the gunshot wound. So we were able to get through that. The guys were great, and we ended up catching the guy that night that shot him. As the guy was walking out to his car, he caught the guy trying to steal his car.
Wow. Again, anything can happen in 911, and you have to figure out how to sometimes triage a lot of those calls, right? Especially when there's other agencies involved and other things that are going on, or as you said, multiple calls going on, and trying to figure out all of that, but also that fast, all of it.
Mhm.
Now, going into this from the other job that you had, was there anything at all that surprised you?
How much we do in a minute?
Yeah.
How
Mhm.
much we do in a minute here? I didn't realize how much there was to it. I didn't realize, you're answering the phone, you're running a person, you're checking premise history, you're sending the call and doing all and maybe confirming a warrant all within 1 minute. And
Trying to eat at the same time.
sometimes, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that is another dynamic there that's hard to explain unless you have either done the job or you're doing like a sit along or something like that, because you can go through and just explain everything, and someone will just kind of stare at you like, really, is that really how it is, or are you exaggerating a little? Like, no, this is dispatch, like this is what happens,
Yeah.
and it's hard to explain. um, when you first started taking calls, Were you nervous at all? Was it did it ever feel overwhelming when you were getting into that portion of it?
One of my first calls right after I was signed off. Did
Mhm.
did you see that Halle Berry movie, The Call?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Okay. My first call is this little girl calls me. She's about 12 years old, and she says, "There's somebody knocking on my door trying to get in." And at first I'm thinking, "Oh, okay, it's just an unwanted." And then she goes, "They just broke the door." So she goes and she runs and hides, and she's hiding in her bedroom. And I'm on the phone with her. And I just said, "If you have to leave an open line, don't talk, all those things." And she's like, "They're in my room and they saw me." And my heart just stopped because I literally just watched the movie like 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And they ended up luckily running out when she saw them. And she was great. She gave me great descriptions, a vehicle description. The police ended up finding him 4 blocks from her house. Um,
Whoa. Okay.
but my heart stopped on the phone. That was the longest phone call of my life.
I was just gonna ask you if something similar to that happened because, um, like I said, you're taking these calls and anything can happen in 911, and to have someone on the phone with you, whether it be an adult, but especially a child, and you're going through this, you want to like reach out, right? You want to reach through the phone and just like come here, like I let me help you, and it's just your voice, and you almost feel helpless, right? In some of the situations, but especially one like this, her whispering, and you made the hair on my arm stand up. Oh my lord. To hear that, and then what's going through your mind at that time when she says they saw me?
My heart froze. I everything in me froze, and all I could do is just pray they got there faster. And I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to. And I was like, "I'm here with you," and I'm whispering too. And then she said, they ran out. And I was never so grateful for anything. I said, "Well, lock your door," because she hadn't closed her bedroom door because she was afraid of making noise that first time. But then she went and put something up against her door and locked her door that after that.
Oh geez, yeah, and I can just imagine too, like as you mentioned, you had just seen that movie, right? And there's
Mhm.
similar situations and everything, and now you're living what you saw, and you're just, what? What was, did you go to the next call like right after that, or was there a moment for you to just just kind of take a breath?
I went to the next call.
Of course, because it's dispatch, right? We
Yeah.
don't always get that chance.
Yeah.
There's not always that chance to reflect, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, right? Because depending on the call, when you go to the next one and you don't get a chance at that moment, it kind of helps a little bit. But then again, it could be bad because you go to the next call, and then when you finally do get a chance to decompress, then it all hits you all at once, almost like a caffeine crash or a sugar crash. It just hits you and you're just drained.
Yeah. The company's really good about that. If we need time off, they will let us take time off. I think
Mhm,
because she was okay and because they caught the people, the officers ended up coming and picking her up and taking her for a drive by to identify the suspects, and she did.
mhm.
Um, as she went past them, she identified the car, she identified the people. So because I had that right there, it wasn't as bad as some of the calls where it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna need a minute," and somebody will pull up your radio and let you go, and usually somebody will follow you and make sure that you're okay and that you don't need anything. We have a really good peer support team here.
Oh, that is amazing. That's one of the things I was going to ask next is one, if you have a peer support team, but two, if you get a chance to ever, talk to someone afterwards because of just of the stuff that can stick with you, the sounds, listening to her, the whispers, and then triggers later on. I remember a phone call that I had, excuse me, that was similar. It wasn't exactly the same, but it had to do with it was a female caller, and her ex-boyfriend had been just being bad, and was just like calling over and over and over. And when she called, she had run down to her basement, and he was there at the house, and he was walking around, like she could see him and stuff. And the same as you, the adrenaline is going, and I'm thinking, please get there, please get there. I don't know what's going to happen, but also I'm about to hear, what's going to happen, and I'm piecing together in my head what is going on. and I hear the doorbell go off. And I remember when the doorbell went off, she screamed, and it made like my entire body just like chills down my spine, and thinking, what is going to happen next? And then it was like going and going and going and going. He just kept hitting it, and then officers got close, and he hauled running. But I'm left there with the caller, and after the call, I remember after the call, I had just a moment where when I ended the call, I remember putting my hands through my hair and just kind of holding my head and thinking, I can't believe that just happened. But that's all I hear is that doorbell in my head. And then the phone rang, and I went to the next one, and then it was gone. But this is the first time I've thought about that in a long time. But that stuff sticks with us, right? There's those little things. For me, it was the doorbell. For you, it might be a whisper or something that kind of sticks with you out of that call, and then it's up to us to kind of figure out how to manage that and move forward, right?
Exactly.
So with all the calls and the experience and everything that you've had, what are some of the other things that kind of stick out with you? In let's talk about what you love about this job. There's a camaraderie, right? That's built. There's those out in the field, but also those that you work with. What are some of those things that have really allowed you to fall in love with this profession?
I'm nosy, so I like knowing all the things. That's probably my biggest thing.
Mhm.
And I like digging out information. So I like seeing finding people. But I really love how great my coworkers are and how they support each other. If somebody's taking a CPR call and they have a radio, and it never fails, that's always the call that it's on your radio, and you need to be the one that AVL dispatches it.
Mhm.
And somebody else will say, "Hey, I'm going to be in your ear for a minute," and they take it and they dispatch the call for them so that they don't have to stop their CPR, and they'll pull them up and they'll help out. And everybody's just so kind to look out for their other dispatchers, especially at night when it's not as noisy, so they can hear what's going on better in the room. And they all look out for us. And like I said, that if we have to go down the hall for something, there's always somebody going and following along behind us. Work is great about if it's not one of our supervisors coming to check on us, they're going to free up a position so that somebody they think that will respond to and we can talk to will follow us down. And that's really important. I don't know that everybody gets that kind of support, but it's really critical for us here. And sometimes it's just freeing somebody up so they can go talk to them and say, "Hey, it's okay for you to leave right now. It's okay for you to go and take a walk. And if you want to go with somebody, we'll go with you. If you want to be on your own, that's fine too. Just let us know what you need." And I love that our community does that and we take care of each other.
I think that's one of the biggest things, right? One of the best things, really, is when we come together to be able to take care of each other, because we're great at communications. However, a lot of times when we communicate with each other, it's not always there. And in some places, as yours, it is different. That portion isn't really there. But in the two centers that I was at in the beginning, like we really didn't talk about certain things. And we would go from one call to the other. We would check. We would say, "Hey, you all right?" But of course, what is the answer? "Oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm good."
Yeah.
And then that's it. You stop right there. But it started to change where we would hear someone say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm good." And then they would say, "Are you sure?" And we'd go, "Okay, no." You can, "No, I'm not." I need a moment, or I need to, just whatever, to talk to somebody, or go to the quiet room and just chill for a moment if we can,
Mhm.
because of course, like I said, it's 911. Anything could happen. But to be able to have that understanding, that again, that camaraderie, that support, the ability to take care of each other and really be there, that's a big thing, and it's very important. It also helps others feel comfortable to share what might whatever it is that might be bothering them, and not have that fear of shame or looking weak or anything for asking for help. And I think a lot of that has been changing in the last few years. What do you think?
I think so too. And we have a lot of younger dispatchers right now. We've got a lot of kids that they're kids. Not all of them are even 21 yet. And so we've got quite a few younger ones, and I think we're all pretty protective over them. And so we want to make sure that they're doing okay with it, because I think sometimes we feel as older dispatchers, just from age, that we have a little bit more life experience and context sometimes. And so we want to make sure that they're doing okay. So we really try to check in on them.
So, in talking about life experience and the 4 years that you've been doing this job, do you feel like there have been um, calls that you have taken where your life experience, something that you may have experienced that others might have not, have actually helped in some of the situations, some of the calls that you've taken?
Yes, there's one call I had where this mom, she called me up. She was having chest pains. She Her husband had been in the hospital with cancer. It was her first night home with the kids, and she was trying to do something nice by babysitting the people who normally took care of her kids. And
Mhm.
so she had a house full of kids. And I was talking to her. She goes, "What? I can't leave." She goes, "No matter." She goes, "I might be having a heart attack, but what do I do? I can't leave these kids." And so I messaged a couple of the officers and I said, "Hey, can you head over there and go down and help her watch until this lady gets from Gresham, which for us that's about 45 minutes away. Can you wait with them until they get there?" And they were willing to do that. And I think that's just something that maybe you think about, that you, having had to deal with finding places for your kids to be, that you might not think about a little bit younger.
Yeah, and the reason I asked too is because um, some of the experience that I had, even growing up, ended up helping me out when I was dispatching. So, for example, um, I was training someone, and I'm listening on the other end, and it's a domestic call. It's a verbal call that's going on, and she's trying to get as much information as possible. But then it goes to a point where it's just like an open line, and then the person hangs up. But before the person hangs up, the caller, that is, I hear a pulse. And as soon as I heard that pulse and the phone click, I told the person I was training, I said, don't hang up. And she goes, why? And I said, just don't hang up. I said, this is what's going to happen. The person is going to get back on the phone and they're going to try to dial 911 again. And when they do, you just immediately jump in and get more information. And sure enough, you hear the phone pick up and the person dialing. Excuse me. And my trainee ended up jumping in and got all this information and everything. And when the call was done, she said, how did you know? How did you know that that was going to happen? And I said, well, for one, I'm old. I said, the rotary dials and other phones that have pulse, a pulse versus a like touch tone. When I was a kid, my friends and I used to play on the phone, and we would call each other, and one person would keep the phone open. And then when they'd go to pick up the phone again, we would yell, to pull a prank. And sometimes it would be their parents, and they'd say, get off the phone. We're like, oh, okay, sorry. But that's how I knew that. So, like, life
Yeah.
experience sometimes ends up coming up where it ends up helping you. So I told her that story, and she started laughing, and she's like, well, who would have known that years later, because you were playing on the phone, you would remember that pulse and
Oh,
it would help at this moment. I was like, yeah, because of that life experience, I was able to help. But yeah, it's because I'm old and I remember pulse dials and playing on the phone.
I will say that the kids run rings around me though. They're so fast, and
Mhm.
I'm amazed at how talented they are and how fast they get through training.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of different things that comes up, and the training is so much different now as well than from. So when I started, it was 2001. I started in 2001, and my training was, you have the next call, and I was like, what? Are you serious? There's nothing else? And I did go to a beginner's training. It was like a 40-hour course that I did about a week or so after I had started. But that first night, it was, this is what this does. This is what this does. My trainer took a 911 call. I observed, and then you're next. And I was freaking out. But it ended up all turning out well. So, you've gone through these 4 years, and we were kind of talking. You mentioned CPR and everything a little bit earlier, and I want to kind of transition now to, um, you all use a program through, RQI. Now, have you thought about, before we get to this main story, have you thought about the amount of CPR calls that you've taken in these 4 years?
Uh, I've taken quite a few. Um, I've out of the few I've taken, well, I've probably taken a couple hundred, and I've gotten 3 lifesaver coins out of that.
That's amazing.
And um, WAC is really good. They have a no go. It's the first question is, are they conscious? The second question is, are they breathing normally? And if it's no, we go straight to CPR at that point.
Mhm.
And we were doing that prior to RQI, but RQI has done a great job at refining that for us. So I feel like we're getting better instructions to the people now.
What are some of the things that you enjoy the most about it, as you talk about, the program, and how in doing CPR it's really refining it? From what I know, there's a lot of practice that goes on into it. So, for example, a lot of times in the beginning, and I'm sure it might have been the same way for you, when we first start out on phone calls, some of the easiest calls to take are the alarm calls, and you do them so much that you're you can do it without even having to listen, or really think. You're just typing away because you've done it so many times. Now with CPR, of course, you're trained, and the difference though is that you're not doing it as much, and there's a lot of different things that go into it. With this program, there's more, scenarios or training or whatever that goes into it, and it gives you even more confidence than you already have, because you've been doing it so much, right? So, what are some of the things that really, that you like about it?
I love having our own coach. So
Mhm.
all of our CPR calls get reviewed by Adrian. Adrian's my person. I think she's everybody in the centers, but I'm not for sure. And she gives me instant feedback on my calls. Is after she gets them, she reviews them and she goes over them and tells me the things I did good, the things that maybe I might want to think about for the future. It's always done in a very positive way. It's never shame based in any way. So she'll say, this was great. This was great. You did this. You were reassuring them here. Um, and then on our next scenario, she might say, okay, so this time the last time you had a call where they were stuck on the bed. So let's look at some things that we can offer to the person to help them. And if it doesn't work, we'll do the compressions on the bed. But if we can say, pull the sheet and pull them down, or try pulling on their clothing, or she'll give us different options to say,
Mhm.
to try to give the person a way to do something, and we'll implement that. And then the next quarter, she'll give us something new to implement and try.
I think that's really good, and also it gets you to think outside the box as well, right? Because there's a lot of times that people will call in and they'll say, I can't get them off the bed, or they're in a certain spot, or I can't do this or can't do that. And these are split second decisions, and there's a lot of different things that you kind of have to pull out. So having, your coach, Adrian, tell you all these different things that you can implement or work on, or just anything like that, is always good. Because what is it that you feel in those moments? Sometimes when you hear certain things, you feel helpless, and then sometimes that sticks with you even more too. Like, is there anything else I could have done? if I would have changed questioning, or if I would have done this or would have done that. It's always us, right, who is our worst critic. And it's always that we sometimes blame ourselves with certain things, even when it's to the point where there's nothing at all else that you could have done, and you've done the best of your ability. We still blame ourselves because we're the
Yeah.
ones who have taken that call, right?
Yeah, and the other nice thing about having Adrian listen to all my calls and give me the feedback is there's times when I do have that feeling. I had never had a caller that was so hysterical that I couldn't calm them down and get them to do CPR. And the training we had just had was on a hysterical caller that we couldn't calm down. And I'll be darned if that wasn't my next CPR call. And I told Adrian, she cursed me on that one. But Adrian was able to listen to it because I was so frustrated because I had two people and I couldn't get anybody to do anything.
Mhm.
And I knew that he needed CPR. And unfortunately, he passed away. But Adrian was able to listen to the call and she said, "Look, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did everything that we've ever asked you to do," and came up with a couple other things, and she just wasn't receptive to it or in a place, and that's really there's nothing you can do. So having her listen and give me that reassurance that I know you're beating yourself up over this one, but nobody could have changed this one. That's always kind of nice too.
Yes, that is always nice to know that you were putting all your skills in there and doing your best, and that nothing could have changed that outcome, but you were there, and you were there to help that family, or however the call came in. Now, I want to transition over here to the story, because you were applying some CPR techniques that helped save a life. So talk me through this. What exactly happened?
My caller called in and I knew immediately it was probably a CPR call because of the level of hysteria he was at the moment. And he said, "My wife just had a stroke." And I said, "Is she conscious?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Is she breathing normally?" And he says, "No." And I said, "Can you check and make sure she's conscious?" And he's like, "She is. She is." And I said, "Are you sure she's awake?" "Yes." And I said, "Put the phone next to her so I can listen to her breathing." And he goes to put the phone next to her and he screams and he says, she's not breathing, she's not awake." And so I used techniques that Adrian gave me. I changed my pitch, went a little bit lower, went a little bit softer, and said, "Let me help you help her." And that got him. And that man, once he knew he had a job to do, and he was on it, and he did compressions on her for 7 minutes until my officers were able to get there because we AVL dispatch. So we had police officers going as well as the fire department. So officers in the fire department arrived and they took over for him. She was transported. She was a code. They transported, and I didn't know what had happened. And I got an email a few days later from my operations supervisor saying, "Hey, I've got a family member for a CPR call that wants to know your name. Are you okay if I give it out?" And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And he looked me up on Facebook and he messaged me and he said, "My mom made it. She's at home today. And only 2% of the people that have what she had make it. And it wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have had dad do the CPR when he did."
Oh,
So that was amazing.
wow. I that is something else, especially to end up getting that information as well, because a lot of times what is one of the things that happens? We don't get that closure, right? We don't know what happens unless we have the chance, or the time to reach out to whoever went out there to whatever call it might be, or having them give you that information. It all depends, but for them to find you and for them to tell you all of that, and to give that statistic as well, I how I mean, how did you feel?
It was amazing. I was so ecstatic. I was ecstatic for the family because it didn't sound good um, on the phone. And when I heard that it was a code, I think it was the last call I had on my Friday, and I was leaving out after that call. And so to find out that she made it, I was thrilled for the family.
Oh, wow. I agree in your your response. to this gentleman as well. Just the way you said, once the person knew that they had a job, they had something, you were firm with what you were saying, and and the person got it and was
Mhm.
like, Okay, let's do this together," and you did it. That, gotta love that.
Yeah, I was so happy for him that he got that outcome because it's horrible listening to their grief while
Mhm.
when they're begging their spouse not to leave them. And so I was really glad that he got a win.
Wow. And just the fact that you were able to put, again, all of those skills to, to good use. I mean, you do all the time, but especially when you have a call like this, and having gone through all the training, different calls that you have taken, and having the coaching and the reports and stuff, and then to have an outcome like this, and just hit you right in the feels, and you're like,
Mhm.
we did it. This is, did you have a moment at all with this call that you thought, this is why I do this job, this is what it is all about here? There's all the calls and everything that you've done, but moments like this, that's why you're here. This is meant for you.
Yeah, when you know that you're letting that family member do everything they can, so no matter what the outcome is, they can feel that they didn't leave any effort, that they didn't try as hard as they could to keep them and save them. I always try to encourage them. I know they're tired. I know CPR is hard. I know how long it goes, and if I've got a mom or a parent, a mom or a dad or a spouse, I always kind of push them a little bit harder because I know that they're going to wonder for the rest of their life if I don't. And I was really glad it worked this time.
That is amazing. I want to look into the comments over here. So we've got a few people here that have joined in, and this Julie with RQI, who's here watching as well, from Hawaii. Jealous. She says, so amazing. And then we've got another one that came in here that says, I have chills. That's why we sit in the chair. What a tremendous service you provided for him in the moment and for the family as a whole. And I fully agree. Very well done. That is amazing.
Well, RQI helped.
Yes, yeah, and they've got an amazing program, and so when you reflect on these 4 years that you've been doing this, what is one of the things that you're most grateful for?
The opportunity to be there for them and to help them at times like that. Um, I think one of my favorite calls, it was I had an open line 911 and I was working a police radio for the city of Hillsborough. And it was just one of those calls where there wasn't anything that really told you that there was a problem on the phone, but you just had that feeling. And so I kept trying to update his location and I had it pretty close. And finally I heard him yell, but you couldn't make out what he was yelling. And so I sent my officers out and they were going out, and luckily it was the radio I was working, so I could hear them to try to figure out if they were at the right house. And I heard the dog barking, and I was like, "There's a dog barking in the house." And they're like, "Well, I've got a dog barking here at the door." And then they started pounding on the door. It's like, "Okay, I hear you." Well, the man had had a stroke and couldn't talk, but he'd managed to be dialing 911, and he dropped his phone as he was calling. And so the fact that my guys were able to get to him, break open the door and find him, it, but if that would have been a call that I would have just hung up because I didn't hear anything, he would have, who knows how long he would have been laying there. So that was a good one.
Wow, this this has been this has been amazing to have you on, and to hear your story, and your journey, even in just these 4 years. A lot of the calls that you have talked about today are calls that sometimes people don't get until 6, 7, sometimes 10 years in, and I that was like the dispatch universe saying, welcome, we're bringing you in. And also, your experience, other things that you've done, lived through, whichever, you were able to go through this, and you continue. I mean, I can see it in your face as we're talking, and I can hear it, how much you really dig this profession. You've got a love for it. So where do you see yourself in, just a few years from now, 5 years, 10 years? Do you plan on moving up to like a supervisor or a trainer, or what are some of the other things that you want to do in this profession?
I love answering the phones and being on my radio and
Hmm.
looking out for my guys and gals. I That's my passion. That's what I love. I want to stay where I'm at. Um, I've had my career where I've done all the things and I've done all the advancing, and I don't need that now. Now I want to take care of the people that I've got in front of me and my coworkers, and just do that and do it well.
That's awesome. As we go into the wrap up of this just phenomenal episode here with you, talking and again learning about your story, and especially this save, with the program and everything, and RQI wrote about this as well, which I'll be sharing the link later on with this after we go off air. But for anyone who is looking at getting into this profession, what is some advice that you have for them?
Just do it. I mean, don't hold back. Do it. Don't let this be the regret that you have, because if I wouldn't have done this, I would have regretted for the rest of my life not having applied and not having tried. It's worth it for the experiences.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you again so very much for coming on and sharing your story, and especially everything that goes through with the program that RQI provides, because there is so much that goes to it, and just listening to you talk about everything that you've done with this program, and then plus having this call, you can hear the confidence in your voice. There wasn't a shift or any type of like nerves. So, maybe there was a little bit of nerves or whatever, but well, no one would have ever known, because you were going through and doing it how you were taught, and but also how you continue to practice it and add the passion that you have for this job. That's a winning combination. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
This has been a lot of fun. And I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching, listening, everything, if you have any comments or questions, or you ever want to be a guest, or just submit some information or anything, you can send us an email, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. A big shout out to RQI, as this is the media partner spotlight for the month of September, and they are also the media partner sponsor throughout the rest of this year. So thank you so much, RQI, but also providing a service and just everything that you do. Thank you very much, especially because we get stories like this, saves, and a program that people can really get something out of. Not just those who are doing this within the trenches of 911, but also for those folks out there in the field, and especially the callers. So thank you for all of that. And you can follow us on Twitter, that is @91 Podcast. You can like us on Facebook, that is facebook.com Within the Trenches Podcast. And then if you want to become a patron of Within the Trenches Media, you can go to patreon.com/WTT Podcast right there. And this can be heard on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And then for patrons, you get an audio version as well. And then for the flagship show, Within the Trenches Podcast, you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.